Welcome to Roll for Crit. We're going to talk to you a little bit today about Hull Breach, the card game, specifically the Loyalty and Vigilance box set, which comes with 3 particular decks. There are other decks you can get, which we'll talk about later. Basically, the way the game works, it's a card game for 2 or more players, and each player has a space station, and if your space station is destroyed or boarded by another player, you lose, and the other players do not lose. Presumably, they win. And you're going to be getting cards from your decks. You're going to be playing different kinds of ships, special upgrades, marines that can board those ships to attack each other.
Or protect your own ships.
Right. Lots of different abilities and kinds of things that they can do. Basically, you have these 2 types of resources, currency and resources. And depending on what you're playing, they each have different costs. Sometimes they give you income also. You get income each turn. Usually the modules for your station do that. Really, the meat of the game is your combat. You're playing ships and then you're fighting.
Right.
So the way it works, let's pretend.
Throw down these 2 guys. Let's do so.
So the way it would work, if it was your turn, you would take as many ships as you wanted, and you would bring them over to my station.
Right.
So you would bring them there, and then it goes in initiative order. So
pretty much, the smaller the ship is, it's usually going to go first.
Which makes sense because they're nimble and quick.
Yes. So in this case, this ship would go first, and it would attack by having an attack power. And I roll a number of dice equal to that, which in this case is only 1 die.
Yeah, they all come with. It comes with a bunch of 10-sided dice. This is the only kind of die that you're going to be using throughout the game.
And what's interesting is there are rounds, pretty much usually what happens, of pretty much shooting back and forth. And the first round, I cannot go for his station at all.
Right. You basically have a buffer, a buffer.
Otherwise, usually you'd probably get destroyed the station.
People would go for that immediately. So your ships are kind of like your shields as well.
And depending on what his defense value is, which in this case is 6,
right,
I happen to roll that or higher, I deal that 1 wound to it.
Right. So for each, that's their defense. He rolled the 6 or higher, so it gets a wound. That's its health. So in this case, he would need 3 wounds to be destroyed. Otherwise, it's still around and can fight again.
And you go back and forth. So in this case, if there's a tie, attacker goes first. But he would attack, and assuming if your ship was still alive, your ship would attack. Then your station would attack.
Right.
Your station is always the largest thing, so it's never going to go.
It always goes last.
Then you repeat the process over again. This time, the station can be attacked.
And then it keeps going until either one side is completely destroyed or the attacker can choose to retreat at the beginning of a round.
Now, there are other things that can happen in battle. For example, the ship I attacked first with has special abilities such that it can actually attack early on before anything else.
Right. There are lots of these keywords that give them lots of interesting things.
And let's say, because I already had one out,
right,
my ship was carrying a Marine. It can board any ship that's equal to or greater than in size or a station, if I'm allowed to. In which case, if you had Marines out, the Marines fight each other, and the winning side, they cannot retreat, has to pretty much decide whether to either take control of the ship, which as long as I have the Marine on there, takes control, but you can get it back if the Marine dies, or to literally just scuttle it and just destroy it.
Right.
Now, the interesting part is, unlike those battles, your Marine battles cannot retreat. So unlike the other in space, I can retreat after. Like if you destroyed this ship, I could be like, okay, this guy's retreating.
Right. Marines, you're going all in. One side is going to live and die.
Yes.
Well, one side is going to live and the other side is going to die.
Yeah.
Not one side won't do both.
Almost stand, one will fall.
And then in addition to Marines, your ships can also have things like drones. Like this ship, for instance, cannot have drones, but some ships will have certain numbers. It will tell you what their capacity is for Marines, for ships, for fighters. Drones are sort of like upgrades. It can actually also hold fighter wings.
They're smaller ships.
Which is this guy, who can stand by himself or could be attached to a larger ship, which can be launched later on during combat.
And of course, there's upgrades to your ships as well. For example, I can give him an ace pilot, which increases his attack.
And then finally, there's stuff like events and tactics, which are additional things in combat that are sort of like abilities, actions, spells, what have you.
And as this game is based a lot like an LCG, each of the pre-made decks has, I would argue, a strategy you expect to go with. The one I'm using right now, which is the one I played most when we messed around with this, is a very offensive deck. My goal was to just rush. A lot of my cards had an ability called Fearless, which would actually switch their defense rating, which is usually higher with their attack, pretty much making all my things glass cannons.
Right. So yeah, depending on which faction you're on, there's different things, and they also encourage you to customize your deck.
Right.
So even though it comes with pre-made,
like we said, it's really an LCG style game, and This is the
Not collectible.
Right. The second one, I know there's one before, which I believe is the Corporate Wars, which came with 3 decks. And the newest Kickstarter, which is out, which is, I think...
In Defiance of Dictators, which has 4 new pre-constructed decks in it. And, I mean, you know, I definitely see the potential for deck building because there's cards that only certain factions can use and cards that only certain factions are useful to or more useful to.
Any good LCG, I feel, makes it so... If you have groups in your LCG, like, let's take a look at, I mean, Netrunner, Doomtown... You want people to still feel like there's a reason why I'm using the RFD, or in your case,
Deep Space.
Like
people.
Certain cards that are exclusive to them or abilities. So, and I think this does that.
Yeah, but of course, it's always nice still just to have those pre-constructed to get started. Which
it's always nice to have pre-constructed because it's sort of, in particular with this game. Every game, you know, you always have an advantage if you have some knowledge of it. But in this game, in particular, I also feel like Android Netrunner has this too. Going in fresh without knowing anything can be very punishing.
No, I would.
And I think that's what is attractive though about this, not in a bad sense. If you've played a lot of Star Runs, which we have, you know, you really enjoy it, but really you're not feeling like, oh, I lost a fight or something. I only destroyed 1 ship, or you don't feel like using Bob. In this, you're really feeling like, okay, I'm gonna attack. You know, I'm gonna wait for another round to attack before I can swing in with my fleet.
You're more. You're saying it's more thematic.
Thematic, and also almost like I want to say it's thematic in both mechanical and theme. Like I mean, there were some times I remember when you got decimated one game. Because you thought for an early attack.
Well, if you're not careful, you could be killed on turn 2, or you could last till turn 90. But no, I was going to say, knowing your deck, super important, especially in this game because you even have a lot of times you're going to be looking through your entire deck for specific cards.
Yeah, what's really cool is, for example, these 2 cards I have, I'm going to lay them out. Have these little symbols on them, which allow me to search my deck for 2 drones, or in this case, a Marine. Some even allow ships, so it really lets you think in advance.
Yeah.
In particular, because a lot of abilities counter each other. For example, I think this one has Jammer, which lowers someone's attack.
Defense.
Oh, defense. No, Painter target lowers defense. Jammer lowers attack.
Oh, you're right.
But there's also something called Stealth, which, as we learned, really annoying because it pretty much raises your defense to near impossible odds.
Right.
But something called Hunter negates that, meaning like you're going to want to really hold on to your Hunter cards.
And on your turn, you can even, if you want, look through your whole deck for any card you want, but you have to pay double the cost to play it. So like just like in a scenario like you're saying, if you really need that Hunter card and you know it's in there. Unlike, you know, most card games where you'd have to hope, like, I really hope I draw it. If it's worth the price to you, you can go find it. So,
and I will say, some of these cards do make it reasonable. I mean, you start at 10 and 10.
Yeah, your currency is like usually fairly fair.
Currently I'm getting 7 a turn, so maybe not like my big cruisers, but like some of the small ships which can get, like have Hunter or something, or a Marine, paying a 4/4 instead of a 2/2 will be worth it.
Yeah, definitely.
So in those nice niche situations.
This is absolutely a game that has depth if you're looking for it. There's a lot of different keywords, as we said, that bounce off of each other, a lot of different types of cards and ships. It can be, I would say, certainly a little daunting for new players, just getting all the terminology down. But once you do, the turns are basically, you know, it's draw, income, play cards, and attack. It's pretty straightforward. It's just getting past that hurdle of what does Jammer mean again, what does Overload mean again. But they usually are. They make sense.
Yeah, and I do really feel it rewards you for really thinking ahead a few steps and thinking like, okay, maybe I shouldn't attack this turn to get another ship in, or maybe I should move my Marine here or deploy a ship or not deploy a ship.
Yeah, a lot of different things can happen. Sometimes, depending on the situation, you either want to be defensive or offensive.
And then one thing we didn't mention, I think this is actually a really big deal, is if we were in a multiplayer game, which we did earlier, should you defeat someone, you gain their resources and currency.
Right.
Which is a big deal.
Adds a lot
So
to it.
there could be a moment like I could try to really weaken you, but if I do, Neil on his next turn is going to finish you off and get the money from it.
Right. So yeah, you have to be careful. Sometimes it's like in games where it's a free-for-all, you have to think, maybe I want them alive longer to help hurt that person rather than leaving me alone with them.
Yeah, and I think this game does a really good job on really capturing that, not just in a deck building game, you can just simply play all your cards and you're done.
It's very tactical, very strategic. And if you like lore, boy howdy does this game have it. It comes with each different version of the game comes with a different book filled with backstory for all the factions.
I do believe actually this expansion technically takes place after the first one. I think it's called the Company Wars. And this is the end of the Company Wars.
Okay, yeah, and it's an evolving story, and they put a lot of effort into making it all make sense, which is cool. Or you can just completely ignore it and still enjoy the game. But if you want it,
but if you're really looking for a game that really captures, at least to me, like the space fights, like not just the random building of a deck like Star Realms or just building your station. I'm blanking on the name of the other game it's sort of like Seven Wonders.
Among the Stars?
Among the Stars. This really captures that much more military back and forth style.
Yes, it really feels like I'm trying to think. It is thematic for what it does. Like you really.
But it captures it mechanically too, because how punishing the dice can be.
No, the theme comes across very well in those mechanics. It's pretty cool. There's a lot going on. Definitely feels like I feel like it definitely probably excels in 2 players, but more isn't bad either.
Right. We played up to 3 because we only had 3 decks, but I believe it goes up to 4.
Potentially more. I think if you had a bunch of more decks. But that'll be the other caveat for this is you're gonna want people who are also willing to dive into it and learn the ropes of it. But after a couple games, you will catch on pretty quick, especially if you're already familiar with something like Magic or Netrunner or games like that. So this is Hull Breach, the expansion or new base set, really.
They really all are base sets. It's just using expansion in a very loose term.
Is on Kickstarter right now. We recommend that you check it out. They have tiers for the new version only or the new version with this attached, which would be
Another
nice.
cool thing, which we forgot to mention, is that one of their pledge levels is actually to send this game to another soldier or veteran.
Yeah, so they're keeping it all into the real life war as well as the space war. So that's kind of nice. You can check that out. There's a lot of interesting stuff there. We will have a link to it below. Otherwise, check it out. We both enjoyed it. That's been Hull Breach. I'm Jonathan Estes.
I'm Will Keeler, and this has been a Roll for Crit review.